Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the ECOMM and welcome to the 7th debate trying to summarize the 6 previous debates. My name is Christer Ljungberg and I am the CEO of the consultancy firm Trivector in Sweden. Normally this would have been a normal ECOMM in Cascais, but in these strange days it has been an online version. And to start with, I would like to give the word to Eduardo Faio, President of IMT, the Portuguese Mobility and Transport Agency. Welcome, Eduardo.
Good morning. I want you to welcome all to the last of the ECOMM online sessions. As you already know, due to the pandemic travel restrictions, the physical meeting of ECOMM 2020 will be only happening in 2021. However, thanks to ECOMM and the municipality of Cascais, we are able to meet virtually and debate the future of mobility on 6 online debates that were held during the past months. IMT, as a member of the board of ECOMM, strongly supports the decision to provide these online debates, and now, looking at the results, you are certain that it was the right decision. On those debates, we had the participation of many authors that submitted their papers to ECOMM 2020. It's important to recall that those papers were written before the COVID-19 pandemic and, as such, ECOMM online provides a much-needed space to debate the impacts of the pandemic on mobility management. In each session, a different theme was debated, focused on mass, circular and shared economy, disruptive technologies, new mobility, alternate people into new mobility, and on the role of mobility management as a tool for social inclusion. Today, as we hold the 7th debate, we will have with us one specialist from each of the previous debates, allowing us to merge the acknowledgement that emerged from each session for a final reflection on how 2021 will define tomorrow's mobility management. In order to kickstart this reflection, I would like to leave some clues for the debate, and I will start by recalling that the future of tomorrow's mobility management as already a complex issue before the COVID pandemic. The need to reduce greenhouse emissions and other pollutants, the need to increase transport safety, the need to end urban congestion were signs of a pressing use to pursue a new mobility. This new mobility combines new trends like mass, air mobility, or micromobility with new technologies like electric bikes, electric cars, or connected and autonomous vehicles, and with traditional mobility solutions like public transport, cycling, and walking that were being overlooked due and over uses of private vehicles. These diversifications of mobility solutions has the potential to provide a seamless multimodal mobility systems where the different modes operate in an integrated environment, allowing passengers to connect between the modes without having to worry about different tickets or different timetables. However, to leverage the emergence of this new mobility, a transport data layer must be built. This data layer will allow us to have information on all the components of mobility systems, providing the basis to find the best solutions to move from here we are to our destination in a safe and sustainable way. As the digitalization of transport is providing more and better data, we will be able to increase the intelligence of our transport systems as long as we are able to ensure that this data is available on open and standard formats. On top of data layer, and in the context where we witness that tomorrow's mobility is arriving today, mobility management is becoming more important than ever. Without proper planning and management instruments, we won't be able to ensure that we are proceeding towards the goals we want to achieve, and the solutions we find today will not turn into future mobility problems. Finally, it's impossible to hold a mobility debate today without reflecting on the effects of the COVID pandemic. In fact, this unexpected event changed the present reality of transports with future implications that are still to be determined. Ensuring the resilience and the safeness of the transport systems through 2020 became a top-level challenge for everyone that deals with mobility. Ensuring that after the COVID-19 reset of the transport systems, there is a gradual and confident recovery towards a more intelligent and sustainable format will remain as a main challenge for the foreseen future. And now, As we get ready to hear our speakers talk about the foreseeing futures, I would like to end by once again thanking to ECOMM and to the team from the municipality of Cascais. Sharing the mobility management experience and solutions is important finding than in the first place. And ECOMM excels in providing a network of mobility acknowledgement and some of the most dynamic space in Europe to debate that knowledge. Well, without further delay, it's time to give the floor to the speakers, which today will provide us with a much-needed introduction on the future of mobility management in 2021 and beyond. I wish to a lively debate, and I hope to meet you all in person next year in Portugal, in Cascais. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And now I give the word to the Vice President of ECOMM, Melanie Schade. Please, Melanie.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Eduardo, for your welcoming words. On behalf of ECOMM, I would also like to welcome everybody to the 7th debate. I think the team has made a very good effort and also has captured the spirit of ECOMM, even though it's only online. And the spirit is that we had the opportunity to learn from each other. In the last debates, we heard from a lot of challenges every single country has and how it was affected by the pandemic and how it managed it in different areas of mobility management. So I think we had the opportunity to learn a lot from each other. And I'm looking forward now to, on the 7th debate, to hear from the different speakers what the results were from the 6 workshops we had. And I think it will be a very important conclusions can be made from out of these debates. So on behalf of ECOMM, I would like to thank the City of Cascais, IMT, Mobi Cascais for organizing the ECOMM online in 2020. And I also, on behalf of ECOMM, looking forward to seeing you next year in Cascais. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. And then we have to start the 7th debate. And today we will have short summaries of the 6 debates we have had the last weeks. I think it will be very interesting to have them more concentrated. And after those 6 presentations, we will have discussion about them, about the theme of this debate. And the theme, as you already heard, is redefining tomorrow's mobility management. And the purpose is also to get inspiration for the next theme of the next year's ECOMM in Cascais. So now we will have short summaries of the previous debates, and I will ask the speakers to stick to the schedule, 5 minutes per person. I think it's tough, but I think you will manage it. And the first debate was, at first you can see here, this PowerPoint, don't miss ECOMM 2021 to save the date. Okay. And then we're back to the short summaries. The first one is about MaaS, Mobility as a Service, a new transport model. And that debate was moderated by Stella Aaltonen from Finland, and she will give us a picture of the debate. Welcome, Stella.
Thank you so much. I mean, we had a really nice first panel. I was accompanied by 3 experts covering the different varieties of mobility as a service, and here are the summaries or conclusions of the session. The core issues in the panel discussion are following. Starting point is that the public transit and rail are the fundamental parts of the development. MaaS is a building block for sustainable transport. In a mobility as a service, the focus is on open data and creating an open marketplace. All operators should be compelled to connect to the use of open APIs. Also, the public transportation authorities themselves should open their APIs for ticketing and payment purposes. You can add criteria to it to go to it, but any aggregator could access it. So that is really important. Another aspect is to create partnership models for private operators. Ecosystem approach should be in all of the development. Mix of different partnerships and strategies are needed. The local authorities should be involved, as this enables creation of incentives, such as focusing on social issues and equity. They have the right to develop common rules and licenses to operate in the community. When the rules are the same for all, those can also be dynamically adjusted in the cases of hurricane, epidemic, and these kind of cases. The work should be focusing on what is best options for the citizens, and the city-led development needs to be enlarged to cover the whole urban regional area, and even the larger region, as the transport and mobility needs are not limited to one city area. The different partners should focus on their competencies. This came really clearly. A platform takes years to build and requires innovation. The expertise in the public transportation authorities is not there. If the open ecosystem is there, different partners can develop innovative services based on that. So basically, everyone should focus on their core competencies. That's a strong message. MaaS enables resilience of the system. For that, you need to have a flexible and be prepared to connect to other services. The regional approach on MaaS tackles better the barriers than just to focus on urban. So the regional dimension is really important. Anyway, the core issue of whole MaaS is how to nudge citizens to avoid private car use. And there were several issues that were raised around this topic. The technology is there to serve people. So it needs to be developed that there's a shared mobility that is better than the use of private car, meaning that is interconnected and seamless as possible. There needs to be a mixture of a variety of options created, and so that it actually answers to the different needs of the user groups, such as right sizes of cars or the right purpose or vans or whatever there is, but it would need to meet the user needs. The focus should be on how to get customers to find the services. The behavior changes a lot of time, and the customers need to build a relationship with the service and also rely on it in order to give up their old habits. Bring the user to the central position with all the possible services. New MaaS services can offer different functionalities for the users. They can create filters such as social distancing, virtual seats, logistics, and so on, if only the innovation potentiality is. So the key for the development is innovative approach. I think these were really the core elements of our panel discussion. The full panel discussion, of course, you can see yourself.
Thank you very much, Stella. It was very good summarizing the first debate. And I have one question that you can take with you to the debate later on. And it's, what do you think of shared mobility in the times of Corona? Okay, so then we move on to the debate number 2. And the theme of that debate was circular economy and shared economy, mobility as business, ? It was moderated by Roberto Tomasi from Switzerland, and he will give us a summary of that debate. Please, Roberto.
Thank you, Christer. And yes, I can follow also the thing which Stella said, because she was also one of the debaters from the experts, and she talked once again about mobility as a service. And one important thing that she also said, we have the possibility to have data which all providers should put in their data in order that we have a database that decisions can be made more on for measures more on specific data. And what an important thing is to create the trust that providers give them data, and their municipalities should add more effort. The second thing was about car sharing from Jeffrey Matthijs, which is president of a car sharing association in Belgium. He analyzed different types of car sharing all over Europe. And the most essential thing is that We know it already that car sharing is, of course, a valuable measure also in order to reduce car trips, but there is a need of support from the public authority, and also to having, like we have, for example, a cycling concept. We should also, on the level of municipalities, have car sharing concept where we should have an action plan. This is a mode of transport which has the same value as other transport modes should have. An important thing is, and which also I know it from Switzerland, the car sharing providers have difficulties, is to provide parking spaces, especially on public ground. And there should be a support also from the public authority, also in communicating, in adding the efforts from the provider itself in order to communicate and make marketing for the people which are target groups on that. So I think it's a good system. We have to encourage to use them more. We should make an action plan. We should it also include as a standard approach in, for example, planning new buildings. The third thing was on sustainable freight distribution in the city. You know, we have this problem that we have a lot of freight traffic in the city, which is uncoordinated, which should be coordinated more, and especially the last mile should be, the goods transport in the last miles should be more on sustainable ways. Therefore, Alexandra Andalou from Vienna showed us their project, and the important thing is that it's clear there is a market potential, but the important thing is where to locate such hubs for the last mile. And there is a need of cooperation between the transport providers and between the city in order to get the right position on these hubs. So I think that was the summarize of that we have. It was a very interesting debate, and I'm looking forward to speak more about them in the following minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And I also have one question for you for the debate later on. Many new mobility services are small and medium-sized companies. So how can cities help them in their business? It's for you. And then we move on to conference number 3, the future of mobility. Disruptive technologies create new realities. And that conference was moderated by Manfred Neun from Germany, and he will give us his view on the debate. Welcome, Manfred.
Thank you very much, Mr. It was really my pleasure to moderate this session. And we had, of course, an incredible wide field with the future of mobilities. Disruptive technologies create new realities. But we had 3 excellent contributions, and during the debate, we structured how they matched and how they contributed based on this fusion mobility approach. You can see here the 6 building blocks. You can see it's all about mobilities. Even mobility avoidance might be in building block number 4 in the sustainability factors of mobilities. Most important is all modes are represented, and the call from Roberta just now that mobility in cities and regions must be coordinated exactly needs to have them all in, and furthermore, it needs to not only coordinate them, but to start a systemic thinking. And this systemic thinking will be enabled by this approach. As you can see, for example, in connected mobility, if the data collecting and sharing and in particular also artificial intelligence will only be handled and developed in the field of connected mobility, then all the other aspects, all the other parameters will get left. While when we are taking them all in systemic interactions, then we are on the way to enable sustainable mobility. And so the first contribution from the host region, from Lisbon, Cascais and around, can be a first great example how that may work. It was focused what they did there, Caterina Marcellino and her colleagues, on public transport. The takeaways you can see on the right hand were mostly about the coordination. They invested a lot in the development of public transport by coordinating all the different key players there. They discovered that sustainability matters, for example, by their pricing policies. And of course, they came also under pressure due to COVID. But most important, they discovered the potentials for further investments, in particular in connected mobilities, information systems, steering, and so on. The second contribution came from Marek Ranalla about the Tartu Smart Mobility revolution. A great example, they invested in 3 fields: in the mobility positioning data system, investing in public bike sharing schemes, and investing in public transport, in particular in enlarging and making faster the bus networks. And by that you can see they built a strong relationship between the data connected mobility block and really the public and shared mobility block. And so the potentials for further investments, in particular in connected mobilities, can be seen high, even so high that this great study and this great example can become a role model for other cities and regions. Finally, the third contribution from Torben Quickert was about the ART, the automated road transport system, which is a part in the Interreg project of the North Sea regions. They had a fantastic strategy, even looking for the micro, meso, and macro level. And based on their developments and the collaborations with other regions, they also can become a great role model for further development. Well, now interesting is to have a look to the synopsis, and the synopsis means to bring all the 3 contributions together. Have a look on this and you see, oh, on the one hand, the field is very well covered. But on the other hand, you see that there could be more improvement about the active modes in general, to take them in an entire system, and also to add more aspects of sustainable development here. I put on the right-hand side all the aspects that we can take away for redefining for ECOMM 2021, in particular about the lessons from COVID-19, the lessons we have to take serious about sustainability, and in particular, what we would like to work on and contribute on the European Green Deal, because this is our main target and main opportunity we can use right now to come from these perspectives and what we have currently to the 4 columns in including mobility avoidance, as we got a lot of good examples now during COVID-19. Thanks a lot for this, and I'm absolutely curious to share this with you in the further debate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Manfred. I really liked your fusion mobility concept. We'd like to hear more about that later on. And I also have a question for you into the debate, and that question is, how do we keep the new disruptive technologies in the sustainable direction?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're moving into real mobility management, as I see it, since the conference 4 was about how to nudge people into new mobility thinking and behavior. And it was moderated by my Swedish colleague Jesper Johansson, and he will give us his view on that debate. Welcome, Jesper.
Thank you, Christer. Yes, it was a good debate. We had 3 speakers as anyone else. We had Florence Labarre from France, Radomira Jordova from the Czech Republic, and Rui Velasco from Portugal. And they had a little bit different presentations. We heard about how to nudge public transport users with the different positive messages delivered in the Transport Planner app from Florence. Very interesting. And then also we heard from Rui about nudging public transport users by simplifying ticketing systems and reduced fares. Very positive results in that project also. And then Radomira had a more overall approach and talked about presenting the national planning tool for Czech cities on how to plan sustainable mobility. So not really about nudging, but a very, very interesting tool. And we will probably see more about it later when it starts to be used all over Czech Republic. But it was very clear when we talked about nudging, but then we also, of course, talked about nudging and talked about the new model of mobility and what we need to go forward with from now due to COVID-19. But going back to nudging, it was very clear that from Florence project, for example, that to reach the behavior change, we have to work step by step, follow the behavior change models. So it's very hard to work with behavior change in the last step, for example. We need to do it step by step, and we need to do it and plan it in long term. Very, very important to remember. And then also that nudges are pretty easy to work with, but they still have to be targeted to the right target groups with the messages due to the target groups' different preferences and interests, of course. But then also there's still a large need for more knowledge on how to realize nudges and how to find the right target groups and so on. But something that really has a future and a part in the new system we have to work with. And then we have a discussion about our transport system, what kind of changes we will see due to Corona, and also because as you all know, we're at ground zero now for our current mobility system. We can't go any more down to ground zero than we are now. This is a stress test of the whole mobility system on the largest scale. So the discussion there was that, well, connected to nudging also, but we need to communicate sustainable mobility modes in a more positive ways and more sustainable modes, because that's really clear that it hasn't been done in many cities, for example. And that also goes back to that it needs to be a better connection and cooperation between different mobility stakeholders that we have today. It's in place in some cities, but still in a very much early time of adoption. So it's very clear that we can see that biking and car use have increased in many cities now since the public transport have been pushed away. So we need to get all the different services connected in a better way. So I think that was the main conclusions, to work for behavior change in a step-by-step long term, find the right target groups and design the messages and the nudges for them, and then also start to build these new mobility systems in all our cities now, where there's better connection and cooperation between different mobility stakeholders.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you. Very interesting as well. So I have a question for you also for the debate later on. And what do you think that the pandemic can nudge people to have more rational decisions about traveling. Is that possible, do you think? So, and then we move over to conference number 5. It's about new mobility, an opportunity for urban and rural regeneration. And it will be presented by Andras Ekes from Hungary, and he will give us his view on the debate. Please, Andras, welcome.
Thank you, Christer. Good morning, everybody. I'm Andras Ekes from Mobilissimus, and I would like to sum up a little bit the debate number 5, having the title New Mobility and Opportunity for Urban and Rural Regeneration. And my main conclusion at the beginning is it's not only an opportunity for urban and rural regeneration, but also an opportunity for the COVID and post-COVID period, because we had examples that can be quite easily used under such circumstances. We had 3 presentations. The first one was held by Ms. Wibke Umbehauen from Vienna, and she's an expert in mobility and gender research and planning, also in spatial areas. And she presented the Cool Streets ID from Vienna, how to return public space to pedestrians and residents and for climate change adaptation. It's an absolutely important topic. They had experiences in Vienna against the hot summer negative impacts in cities, and they tried projects called Cool Streets as a response to the heat islands, which is a common problem in cities and in big cities. And they created car-free areas, forbidding parking and allowing only walking, cycling, and improving both the street furnitures and opened spray showers and water sources. And it was an absolutely positive project started in 2019. More than 92% of the residents wanted to repeat the project, and 70% of the inhabitants of Vienna think it's a very good idea. So it could decrease the average temperature in such areas by at least 5 degrees, which is quite important in a city area. So also COVID showed that there is an unequal distribution of public spaces, and when you want to make more social distancing, this approach is quite important. Vienna started to improve this project by 2020. 17 Viennese districts repeat or start this Cool Street approach from June to the 20th of September. And there will be not only temporary solutions, but from this year, 4 Cool Streets Plus, which are permanently redesigned areas. After our second presenters was Melanie Schade, being Vice President of ECOMM and also Project Manager for Mobility Management in the German Federal Institute. And she explained the mobility management in rural areas, how they started an 18 rural areas testing different parts of Germany to make a long-term protection of services of public interest and mobility in different rural areas. So those areas which are quite in a remote situation, and public transport and other public services are quite in a lower level. And these tests using flexible transport, car sharing, ride sharing, or better quality multimodal hubs and public transport solution improved the accessibility and trust toward these public transport services. And I had the opportunity to hold a third presentation, which had the title 6 weeks of a sexy DRT system on the hilly remote areas. This was a testing project developed under the SharePlace Interact Central Europe project, and it was implemented in the city of Zalaegerszeg in Hungary. We planned it for more than 1.5 years in order to create a new minibus system, a DRT system connecting to the local bus network. We named it Zerge, which is chamois, and Zerge is based on the abbreviation of the city of Zalaegerszeg, which is many times abbreviated Zeg, and we could test 3 different routes with 7 departures on each line on weekdays and 4 departures on weekends. And it was a quite successful testing period with 2019 users in 2019. And it had a quite strong IT background. And it was very interesting to see that despite the fact that in these hilly, remote areas, without good public transport and with a huge level of mobility poverty, more than 60% of the users booked for the journeys of the DRT through different IT platforms, mobile phone or internet. We will repeat this test. It means that COVID unfortunately frozen the second test to be planned for this spring in 2020, but we hope to start it by the August 2020 for other 6 weeks. And after the testing period, we really hope that the municipality will be able to finance the most successful and most important lines of this DRT to include those people who were excluded from the public transport for 30 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Andras. And I also have a question for you for the debate later on. And this is, how can we support rural areas in getting more active mobility? And then we move to the last, the 6th conference. And it was about inequalities, mobility management as a tool for social inclusion. It was moderated by João Seixas from Portugal, and he will give us a picture of that debate. Welcome, João.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much, and good morning. We had a very interesting webinar, the 6th seminar, about mobility, inequalities, and social inclusion. In that sense, we had 3 speakers from Portugal, from Netherlands, and Germany. Anabela Ribeiro from Portugal is studying the age population, the elder, for some time, through inquiries, through field studies, and she connects their needs, their difficulties in terms of mobility and accessibility in space and territorial issues, with the possibilities of territorial participation beyond common sense. That means to think outside the box, and with one of the most vulnerable groups that we have in Europe, which is precisely the age population. So she proposes new technologies that must be adapted to the needs of the different groups. And also, how can we debate and act in terms of participation? That means political participation, collectively or more collectively, to find more good solutions for the future. And then we had a presentation from Holland, from Nick Apeldoorn, who is studying other, I wouldn't call so much a vulnerable group, but a group with difficulties in terms of mobility in our cities, which is the children, and connecting the needs of our children, the theoretical concepts of equity, which is different from equality. So again, like the first presenter, different solutions for different needs in terms of spatial mobility and mobility management. And Nick also connected that with the new situation that we are living today, with the pandemic situation. After the pandemic, people will have less money, unfortunately, for the next at least 2 to 3 years in Europe. We'll see about the political economic models that we are going to face with. And so those questions of spatial equity are more important than ever. And then we had a third presentation from Germany, Rebecca Karbaumer, who is working in their city about shared mobility and how to develop micro I would call it even nano mobility hubs, very small mobility hubs for a good mobility and a democratic mobility in the different cities. So it's about also public spaces. Of course, each of these presentations would fill in 5 minutes, but anyway, that's the time we have. For main reflections that I would leave, I would only say 2 to 3 main reflections. Connectivity and accessibility are the fundamental issues for our cities since we started as humankind to develop our cities. So it's a question of progress, but also a question of justice. And it's interconnected. It's not progress that comes before justice. It's not also the other way around. They are connected, like in a model that our colleague, for instance, developed some time ago. I would remember that recent neurosciences, scientific discoveries, have said that the brain cells that are more connected with the different ones are the ones that develop more. And on the contrary, the ones that are more alone are the ones that do not develop. So it's the same about humankind, it's the same about justice, it's the same about progress. So with the pandemic exacerbated these discriminations, or better said, these challenges. So we need to think, and the main reflections about our panel was in the 3 directions, I would say. First, it's a general one about social inclusion through mobility, the accessibility and uses. The second one is to think particularly in the most vulnerable groups. That means the children, the elder, but also the women, which are very much affected by the pandemic economic crisis. And then we have the poorest people and the precarious ones, which are usually in the most suburban places and the most non-connected places of our metropolises. It's just like the economic or the ecological vulnerability that we have to think about. And the final one is the most disconnected places that we have in European cities. So a lot to discuss, and I hope we will have a very good debate later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joa. I have also a question for you for the debate later on, and what was the most interesting way to promote social inclusions by mobility management, by all the things you have told us? And thank you very much, all 6 of you. You made it very good to handle this in just 5 minutes. I'm impressed, I would say. So now it's time for a discussion on the overall theme for today, redefining tomorrow's mobility management. And at first, I would like to ask you, to me, mobility management is soft measures to influence transport in a sustainable direction. And even if I look at the website of ECOMM, I can have that definition. But nowadays, there seems to be a much wider definition of mobility management, especially in the US, but also, as we have heard today. I'd like to hear from you. Any of you have any comment on that? The wider definitions of mobility management? Anyone?
Yes.
Yes, Manfred?
Yes, I can start already with the questions you gave to me, because this is covering more or less all.
Okay.
How to avoid that the new disruptive mobilities can be brought into a sustainable direction, because it's all about sustainable directions. And what you said, the soft measures, yeah, that's the current saying, and that's even the current understanding. But what we can achieve now with the new technologies really is to make the soft measures not only to hard measures, but to using them as the really leveraging ones for a sustainable development. And in my opinion, this has 3 preconditions. The first precondition, in my opinion, should be that we really change from this listing to the one, to the other, to have the disruption of all the technologies in mobilities, to bring it together really in a system. And it's even more, it's to accept that when we are talking about mobilities, this is not about transport only. There's much more in all the health issues, all what's systemic relevant, what we discovered now in the COVID-19 pandemic. There we can see that it's much more than transport only. The second one is about the understanding of sustainability. And in sustainability, when we are working with this, we should respect that there is a fundamental problem in sustainable mobilities. The mere reduction of unsustainable technologies does not automatically lead to sustainability. This is what we have to take into account. Rebound effects often diminish the effects of technological innovations, and so on and so on. So sustainability must be understood and also built from a systemic perspective. And there's a third thing which makes really the soft measures now these change makers. Let's call it change makers. It's about as long as the new technologies will be seen and handled as tools only, then of course they can be very disruptive and enlarge the risks. So the negative impact will come into work. While on the other hand, if we see the data sets, how they are creating values, then we will come forward. And I will give you three small examples how data sets can create values. The first simply is about that the value of a data set depends on the benchmarks and the understanding of quality. Most what we can see are quantitative data sets. This we have to overcome. We need the quality approach. Secondly, the value of data sets depends on the barrier of entry. They are technically incredibly complex. We have to make them transparent. And thirdly, the value of data sets depends on the use cases, if possible, the enabling, but there is not necessarily a common and generic value inherently in the data. They are plain of that. So it's about us and, of course, also according to artificial intelligence, how they will interpret it. So we currently see a lot of organizations that do not look into sharing data as they fear that this may result in giving away their values. But the values that are really public, we have to find out and make it public. This all together, making data sets absolutely transparent and a usage for all public authorities with the help, of course, of good advisors and experts. This brings us forward, and this can be a great contribution also from our side, from the ECOMM 2021 to the European Green Deal.
Okay, thank you. Now you have taken all my questions, which I have been thinking of, and answered them shortly. Sorry, I don't mean so. Are there any other comments on the more wider mobility management definition today? Anyone else who want to? Yeah, Roberto.
Yes. So, according to what COVID-19 made with us, in order also of our travel behavior, I think there are a lot of chances that we should take into account and look for that they will go further on this type of transport behavior. One for me, and this is also what Manfred said, also regarding the targets that we have to reach in climate CO2 reduction per 2050. So one thing which is very important as a simple measure is mobility avoidance, and one thing is to have this is to promote furthermore this home office. So home office, yes, as a tool to avoid commuting trips. I heard from a lot of companies that I'm also working with that before COVID-19, it was a kind of cultural debate. Yeah, should we push that in our companies or not? Then COVID-19 came, and then we had to or the companies had to push, and then now they also reflect then that are a lot of conveniences on that, you know. And so this is a situation that you can say, yes, let's open it, let's push it more, this home office. And a second thing also related to mobility avoidance is the quality of the neighborhood. So the urban quality, the quality of the public spaces, in order that we stay more at home, more in the surroundings, we don't have less, we should have less needs to traveling around also in leisure times to everywhere. And this, the quality of urban situation, the public spaces, to give more space to people which are living there, which are biking there, which are going by foot there, which are relating each other outside. I think there are two fundamental questions. So, and that's it. In order to say, should we widening the definition of mobility management? It's more and more, for me, it's more and more in a strategy to avoid mobility. That should be more included. It's not only changing behavior to multimodal transport, it's to other transport like biking and going by public transport, but more strategies to avoid needs of mobility.
But do you think that the COVID pandemic will help us in this transformation to a society where we don't need to travel so much? Is that possible?
I think, yes, I think in business trips, I think that, for example, so a lot of people had, or they're obliged to make home office, and I don't think that for the whole for the most of people that were a negative situation, you know. I think that there were also positive situations. You had different study where they also said, I can imagine to stay 2 or 3 days at home. I can better concentrate on working and so on. So I think this could be yes, COVID-19 could help us in that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, but I also hear people here I'm at the office, for example. I'm not at this beautiful train. I'm really, I'm at a Trivector office today, and almost every day. But we are about 1/3 of our employees are here, and the other ones, some of them say, like you're saying, Roberto, but some say we are longing to meet all our colleagues, so we really want to come to the office very soon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are the two situations, you know, but of course this social inclusion in the office, this sharing and discussions in the office and so on are of course important. I don't say that we should stay to open it completely and say, okay, work at home the whole week. But there are a lot of companies which I know that before COVID they had a kind of approach of with regard to home offices, which I said, yeah, it's not relating to our culture, to our company culture, and now they made experiences which they were obliged to do that, which changed a little bit the mind.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Jesper, you have also a comment, please.
Yeah, yes, a small one, just from real life to show how this could change in a company. So I think definitely it will change how companies will work with their employees. Maybe not every company, but I'm working with one of Sweden's largest companies now, and they are developing their travel policies and other policies with the aim to have at least 40% of the staff working not at the office every day. So that's the kind of real changes that will happen, because they see that it works very, very good with this flexible way of working. And we don't need to have them traveling to work every day, spending many hours just commuting and polluting. So it sounds very interesting, and I think that would be like a guideline or benchmark for a lot of Swedish companies to look forward to.
Okay, thank you. Often I give a lot of speeches about the future of transport and so on, and often when I do this, I will always start by saying it has never been so difficult to predict the future like it is now. And that was before Corona, I said so. And it's even more difficult right now. And many things are influencing the future. Trends like digitalization, which we have talked about, migration, climate change, sharing economy, circular economy, lifestyles, urbanization, etc. And today we also have the special times caused by the COVID-19 and so on. What of all these trends would you think will be the biggest game changer? Will it be the COVID who will be the biggest game changer, or will it be some of the other trends, digitalization, climate change, etc.? Anyone wants to comment on that? Yeah, Andras?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that COVID, on a shorter term or on a medium term, it's a game changer, but it depends a lot how is the ability to learn. And I think that there are 3 or 4 different categories of cities. If you consider the cities, there are front runners who find good innovations, can be for the circular economy, can be for or against COVID and so on. So they are front runners with very good ideas, and there are followers who can check what the front runners are doing. And unfortunately, there are late runners which are not observing or are not brave enough to decide, and there are sleeping cities who are even in more delay than the late runners, which is a very, very ugly category. And I think that the responsibility is the key factor, actually. Responsibility, social responsibility, planners' responsibility, consultants' responsibility, and of course, politicians' responsibility. We see that it's an absolutely important key factor now. If you are brave enough to decide in time to try to improve your mobility conditions in the city. For example, cities lost a big part of the public transport users, 80 to 90%, while in the same time, the car traffic decreased by 50 or 60%. And actually, you have more cars in many cities than you had before the COVID, but much less public transport users than before the COVID. So I'm sure and convinced that cities must create attractive mobility packages for users, for people, because if you don't do that, you won't never find that, or not never, but for a long term, you won't find the trust, and people will be quite far away from public transport solutions. And I think that it is a key point, and those cities and those decision makers who don't see that are on a quite wrong way, and it's a very, very huge responsibility.
So you mean it will be tough to get people back to public transport?
Absolutely, and I think that there are very
or in the near future, forever or no?
I think that it's a task for the very near future, but with very long-term impact. Because if you go on the way that you have maybe 30% less passengers in 2 months than you had in August 2019, some companies will decrease the public transport level. And if you cut the services because of the less of revenues or due to the lack of passengers, it will be very, very difficult to increase it again. And you will give more spaces for car users, and some cities are going in the street, and it's a very, very dangerous one.
Okay. Joe, you also have some comment, as I see.
Yes, thank you. I fully agree with what Andres said. I believe that the pandemic is exacerbating the differences that we have from before the coronavirus crisis. So there are very different capabilities, very different sorts of reactions and possibilities in terms of this crisis that we are having now. So also to say what Manfred said, mobility and mobility management, of course, it's mainly a political issue. Of course it is. So if we have to do something about justice and about more equity in terms of mobility, accessibility and management, now it's the time. And with the Green Deal that we are talking in Europe and other possibilities and other types and scales of Marshall plans and investments in public investments, it's very important to put now those principles in the terrain. So going direct to what you've asked, I would say that, yes, I also agree that some of us will be more in home working, but some that can do that, you know? Because the most vulnerable groups in our societies are not only in terms of the aged persons or the children, are also the precarious in terms of labor, for instance, which cannot choose and have to work, for instance, in construction or in tourism or in restaurants, and they have to get the main transportations every morning. And so we have to work in these different kinds of situations very carefully and with much attention. The possibility for us to be at home working, I also believe that is going to increase the diversity in the small scales in our neighborhoods, which is quite interesting. Mm. So the previous tendency that we had in the terms of too much, I would say, specialization in some of our neighborhoods can be a little bit blurred now with the situation of health, which might be paradoxically quite interesting in terms of new kinds and patterns of mobility in terms of small scales. Now, going directly to your question, and I will finish by now, I would say that the most interesting ways to increase social inclusion through mobility, and after what we are discussing now, I would say that we could go precisely to the most vulnerable groups, the most innovative solutions, the best solutions, the most interesting ones could be and should be applied precisely to the most vulnerable groups and the most vulnerable places, not only in the city centers, I mean. It should be a new kind of Marshall Plan for the most unexpected and the most needed places in our cities. I have some more comments about technology, but I would leave it for later on.
Okay, thank you very much. As I understand, many of you are pointing at we need some kind of new mobility packages to solve the problem during the corona. And that leads me to the question I gave to Stella. What do you think about shared mobility in the times of corona? Would they like to share mobility these days? Stella, do you have any comments?
Yes, I think that shared mobility, in a way, it's a individual transportation, but it's just that you don't own them. So it's, in a way, it's the same kind of issue as in a private car, and we're just altering. I think that the key issue in here is to what we are changing the habit into travel habits. So is it actually enabling the health and the other issues that are important, or is it actually just other form of using a private car, or is it just a shared form? So I think this is an important thing that we need to need to realize that yes, shared mobility is needed in order to get out of the private cars, but for that we need to really look into what kind of services need to be incorporated. And this, I think, leads back to the previous question, is that the digitalization will really actually be a game changer. I think that is really truly the issue when we're talking about the API intersections of different services. And especially now with the virus, it has showed that the mobility management issues are coming close to the logistical issues. So we are not just looking at the mobility as such, we're looking at the whole transportation system in a combined way, where we are actually then enabling the different data sets to. So when we are combining with different data sets, engaging stakeholders dealing with these particular issues, I think we have another game changer coming up. So this is when we are largely incorporating different science fields together to showcase and give the same message everywhere. Because nowadays it has been the transport and mobility sector trying to convince others, then everyone would engagement, everyone would be giving the same message. So it becomes easier to have this volume changing happening with the companies and with their policies and all the way through. So I think the key change is this large stakeholder cooperation that gives pressure to the political side. So it leads back to digitalization in a way, but they are cross-sectorally intervened each other. And I don't think in the future we can only look at the mobility as such anymore. We really need to have the different behavior sectors together, different sides together. So actually handling the issue as a whole requires different skill sets of working with it. I think that is a key issue also too.
Okay, thank you. We have had one question here to you, Roberto, from Alexandra Anderloo. She asked, will the MIDI Hubs project be a viable solution for the citizens? Could it be applied to your city? Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, it could be applied to our city. So in Zurich, there are some projects on that to create. We have now pilot projects from not a city hub, but a micro hubs. You know, micro hubs in a district where now it is a pilot, and there is also a plan that the city, together with the Swiss Federal Railways, will make a city hub a little bit outside from the city in order to bundle all the transports there, and then to make a finer distribution within the city in order to avoid or to canalize this freight traffic. So of course, yes, of course, I think Vienna is on the right way, and I think a lot of people or a lot of cities are testing and doing that. But let me come back, if I can, to the other discussion again. Anders said that we recognized in COVID-19 situation that we have a higher amount of motorized traffic in the city. Yes, but what we even more had, of course, not in all cities, that we also had a high amount of people going by bike, you know, and we had also cities which had we'd made kind of quick solutions in order to enlarge bike lanes and so on. We know it from Paris, for example, and so on. This gives us a clear sign that we should, going forward, and reduce planning phases for making bike networks. I think this is a clear sign, because I'm sure that we can keep a lot of people which now went by bike because she couldn't go by public transport, and then she used the bike. There are, of course, a certain amount of people which made a good experience on that, and this gives us signs that we should also going up and speed up in bike planning, lane planning.
Okay, thank you. Last in this discussion, I have one question before, and that was about, we haven't talked so much about the micromobility. There's a lot of talk these days about the e-scooters and so on. And I read some article about the e-scooters in Oslo, and people using those e-scooters, electric scooters, before the electric scooters, 60% walked, 23% used public transport, 5% used shared bikes, 5% used taxi, 3% used own car, 2% didn't travel at all, and 1% their own bike. So what do you think about the micromobility? How good is it? Is that one part of the solution, or is it not? Anyone want to comment on that? No, nobody?
Yep, I can comment.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a part of the system, in the same way as a bike sharing system is. It's the same kind of system. It's a new way of travel that we are always a little bit it's hard to take in, especially for city planners and regional planners, how to use this and how to put that into context. But the micromobility system is maturing every day and adapting every day also into city planning and the context and the culture. So it has to be there, and we have to welcome it in with open arms. And I also think, looking at this is the most important thing, because we had some reports in Sweden saying that these kind of systems, the shared systems or combined mobility will not be the solution for the future. But that's when you look at it in itself. So micromobility has to be connected to public transport. It has to be connected to car sharing and so on, and then it will be a very, very important thing. But standing all alone, then we can have a discussion about it, of course. But we have to make sure that it won't stand alone.
Yeah, but if 60% walked before the e-scooters, for example, that isn't good for active mobility.
Nope. That could be one of the negative effects, but I think that could be changed in the future if it will be more connected and more integrated in everything. Manfred talked about it with his figure, saying that we have to work with everything, and now we're not. We're working with singular issues all the time. So active mobility is then it's only biking, and of course public transport in a way, but has to be connected.
Okay, and at last I will give you 1 minute each. No, I don't give you the word, Manfred. I'll give you 1 minute each to think about what will be the most important theme that will be lifted in ECOMM 2021 next year in Cascais. What do you think? Very, very short. Anyone to start? Yeah, Roberto.
Yes, for me, it's clear. For me, the most important thing is mobility avoidance. Reduce the need of long trips, and that's an important theme, and there are a lot of strategies connected behind there. So improve urban quality, give more space to pedestrians, to people which would like to stay outside, to bike users, and so on.
Yeah.
The whole theme of home office and so on. So overall theme, mobility avoidance.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Next one, Andras, what do you think?
I consider that the key message is the speed of the reaction, also in mobility, in decision making system. And COVID cleared us that if you are not quick enough in your decision making and implementation of new mobility solution, you are almost not able to change the trends. We've been living in a world with quite constant mobility schemes and planning schemes, and COVID changed everything, maybe in a short term. But if you cannot react in time, you will be in a very difficult situation how to rescale in a healthy way the different aspects of mobility.
Okay, thank you. Jesper, do you have any thoughts about the themes for next year?
Yes, I think the most important should be the new mobility system that we have to build after this ground zero that we have experienced now. And this is, well, it's due to connected systems and everything, and we can see that it's failing all over now because we're nudging people into car use in most of the cities, sadly. And we're not nudging people into biking or using micromobility, which they want to do. Clearly, because they have shown that they are biking in the way. So we need to show that, we need to have this discussion that every city and every region all around need to focus on, and how to go from public transport and other modes of transports into one new mobility system that has to be changed.
Thank you. Joa, do you have any comments on the themes for you next year?
Yes, I would propose, as the colleagues are talking very well about the combination, the combined mobility between heavy and light transportation, for instance, I would propose that combination between green mobility and just mobility. Not to separate the things too much, which are of course irrelevant, but how to combine the things together. Accessibility into ecological mobility, not only to the most vulnerable groups, but to everyone.
Okay, thank you. Manfred, do you have anything?
Yes,
ideas?
I like very much what all my colleague panelists said. Putting all together, for me, it's a new mobility as a sustainable system, putting the human approach first, but taking all the new technologies in. This is not only what I told you about data sets, but we can also see that in this field of data collection and of autonomous driving, for example. There is a lot of change that we can see already into this direction, because in the past, those providers from this field were collecting their own data and really have them in their own stock. Now we can see that more and more companies, like for example Lyft or Argo.ai, are sharing their data, giving this to the public, and this is not because no, let's say it in the top positive way. It is because they need also all the others to go for a team play in this field to make the best of it. And this trend we really have to support.
Thank you. And Stella, do you have any more ideas for next year?
Yeah, I would put the user into the focus. All the user needs, because we are building up the systems for the users, and also the hidden needs and the things that the users don't even realize. And I think this would be the key issue for the future, because we need to have the users to use the system that we are creating based on all the fantastic things that we have happening.
Thank you. You're so good, all of you. So I don't need to summarize it as I see it. I make a quick summarizing of what you have told us today. As I see it, the pandemic will change. Something happened to my screen. Do you hear me or see me? Yeah, there you are. Thank you. The pandemic will change how we travel, definitely. We need to think more about avoid travel, plan our society for less travel and not more, plan our spaces in the cities so that we really can enjoy them when not traveling. we need to have that much more higher speed of reaction. We need action now, right now. We need a new mobility system. We need more of combined mobility, mobility as a service and so on. I like very much the green and just. They must be green and just, and we must put the users in focus. And we also must use all the new technology in the future. So thank you very much, all of you. I think this has been a very interesting panel discussion with you and listening to you. And now there will be some video from for the next ECOMM, as I see. Is it so? Is it coming right now? Beatrice? No. Nothing happening. Nothing happening at all. You can see here if you have any message. No. Technical problem. Just 1 second. It says. So I hope we will see each other next year in Cascais, and that's what the video will be about, as I understand it. If the technical problems, oh, maybe we can see it. So.
Thank you very much for attending this CS conference, a special one in a special year, a distance conference. But here in Cascais, we are looking forward for next year to be with you in this beautiful town, welcoming all the participants, all the panelists to discuss the future of mobility. We like to be right in the center of this discussion because we like to be one step ahead. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you again next year for the ECOMM 2021.
Wow, so very beautiful. I remember when I was in Cascais, it's very beautiful. I don't think there will be any time to come to the conference. We just have to look at all the beautiful sceneries and so on. So, are there any last words from Eduardo or Melanie also?
Just only to hope to see you all in Portugal, in Cascais next year, and the good work that you have done in last days.
Thank you. And are there any word from Melanie as well?
Yes, I want to thank you today also for the debate. It was very interesting. You very well captured the discussions we had and also summarized well what kind of topics we can work on for next year in Cascais. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of you who has listened to this debate. And I hope we will see you in Cascais next year. And bye-bye to all of you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
You.
Thank you so much.